Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Charging Dog podcast. My name is Olalekan Oshunkoya, and I'm glad to host this show. Today, we have a special guest, another social impact leader, another founder on this episode of Meet the Founders series, and it's really exciting. And I'm actually very excited to have her today. It took me a while to get on board, but yeah, she's finally here. So, welcome with me, Mrs. Funke Adeoye, the Executive Director and founder of OPN by Africa.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm always very excited to bring in, to have my guests on the show because I know that they all bring in something different, something exciting, and a lot of us, we are all in the same social impact space, but more importantly, because you're founders, you develop, you find passion and you find purpose in your passion. And it's always very exciting to have people share the platform to talk about that. And everybody, even though that residual background thing is the same in terms of our world, but we all, it's different sectors, it's different areas, it's different issues that people are working on. So I always start the show by asking just one very important question, which is just like, what's your social impact story? And then how does that relate to the founding, why OPN by Africa? Why not? I know you're a lawyer, but why not someone doing something to become a son or something, or doing in corporate law or doing some high-level commercial practice somewhere in white collar? But you're here fighting for the indigent and the everyday people. So what happened? Tell us.
Okay, thank you so much once again. My social impact story is very personal to me. It's I probably have said it a lot of times, but I'm happy sharing it because I had no idea I would be where I am today several years ago when it happened. So my dad found himself a victim of the criminal justice system several years ago, and I as well because he was arrested and detained for a crime he did not commit, and it was an incident that traumatized our family for a while. When he got out of detention, he lost his job, and I had to stay out of school for a year. And that was when I first saw how the criminal justice system can be disproportionately affect people who don't have wealth or influence. And this happened several years ago. When it happened, my dad would usually just say he would like for one of his children to become a lawyer because what happened was everything he faced happened because he didn't have access to legal representation. Yes.
Okay.
So he would just jokingly say one of his kids, we're six of us, and I ended up being that kid. This happened in 1997. And then in 2008, I got into University of Benin to study law, spent 5 years. And I think it was in my final year at university that it came back again. I wrote my final year thesis on restorative justice as a tool for prison reforms. And again, this time around a little bit of adults, because I was 20 when I finished from Uniben. Yeah, so in my adult life, I once again came across how the criminal justice system can be quite critical to people who don't have means through my thesis. The following year, I went to law school. Law school, I began to provide voluntary services to inmates of Suleja Custodial Center. And I think that was about the time I knew that I really had a passion for human rights work, and criminal justice reform as a whole. So I went back to Lagos, where I used to be. I actually practiced law in a law firm for about 4 years. And it was after I relocated from Lagos to Abuja that I told myself I really want to go into this social impact space, development space. And the rest is history.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. It's always the same. It's always very personal. Because the truth is that when you do social impact work, people think that it's like there's always a sacrifice component in it. Like if you have studied law, you could have pursued a career that will give you a lot of money, that will give you a lot of comfort and freedom to choose and to live a good life because you have so much money because you can't actually pursue that.
Yep.
But when you begin to do social impact, but the common trend that I've realized is that most of us will also there's always a personal experience that is enabling and motivating that path.
Absolutely.
And that's usually the case. And I'm not surprised that you have. Funny enough, we've known each other for a while. I've not really actually had this personal component of the story. So yeah, I'm not. It's interesting. And I'll just ask now we know why you're doing what you're doing, but
Yeah.
what are you doing? So tell us about
No, good
OPM for
question.
Africa.
Okay. Thank you. What am I doing? 7 years ago, I knew exactly what I was doing. What I was doing, or what I started out doing, was to provide access to justice to people who cannot afford legal services. It was as simple as that. I think it's still simple. It's just that in the past couple of years, my work has evolved because now I have come to understand the space better. I've come to understand the challenges better. I've come to understand what the root cause of the problem I'm trying to address is. And I am now tackling the problem using different approaches. So basically, right now, Hope Behind Bars Africa is a human rights organization that is looking to close the justice and inequality gap using early intervention, legal support, reformatory support, evidence-based advocacy and technology. That's a lot of English, so I'm going to break.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you need to break that down to people who don't understand the space. Okay.
Yeah, so I
please.
need to break that down. Basically, I would start by just painting what the problem is a bit, and I think everybody can relate or understand the problem. The criminal justice system has a lot of challenges. Now, the criminal justice system consists of the police, the judiciary, which is the court, and corrections. And some of the challenges we have seen is issues from congested correctional facilities to increase in the use of abuse of power amongst law enforcement, such as the police, delay in court processes. Now, all of that has increased the number of people we find behind bars who have no business being there. So I think that is clear enough. We are trying to address this issue of the increase in the number of people who are in prison, who have no business being there, using different means. So one of the ways we do that is provide direct legal services to people who cannot afford legal services. So we have a network of over 200 pro bono lawyers across the country who provide these services to awaiting trial inmates. Now, we also do use evidence-based advocacy. So evidence-based advocacy is to say we are on the field, we work across different correctional facilities, and we sort of like know what the issues are. So how can we escalate what the issues are to stakeholders? How can we help them see how their policies can affect what is going on behind bars? Now, the last one is technology. I mean, we can't do anything right now in the world that we are if you're not leveraging technology. There's just a whole lot that technology helps to do. I'm going to give an example. Last year, during the End Bad Governance protest, we deployed a toll-free line that people who were arrested could easily reach out to, or people who knew people who were arrested could easily reach out to get legal representation. And I mean, we were able to provide legal representation for free to over 1,000 protesters across the country. So that's something technology helps you to do. And then so many other things that we do with technology as well.
Absolutely, that's really good. I mean, I agree with you. I know that that's a really big. And we don't have we have a lot of people working in the human rights space, but we don't have a lot of organization that's actually tackling that's the direct intervention to everyday people. Like most people will work at policy level, they will work at just like trying to get lawyers, but not necessarily like providing direct legacy, because it's very expensive to actually do direct legacy post pro bono. So it's a lot of work. So well done, and that's really remarkable work. And I think I have no doubt about the fact that I've seen the impact of your work. I see how it's necessary. I know it's important, and it's interesting because it's not even a Nigerian problem. It's a global problem. Every country, every society is experiencing some element of
access to
justice issue. But just that it's more here because of the extended problems that is making it easier because of our justice system, our criminal justice
institutions are quite weak. Yes,
exactly. So. And that's it. So you did talk about your social impact story, which is basically why you've chosen this path and why you're doing this. And then what I wanted to speak to is basically you have this personal experience with your life, with your family, and apologies, I'm so sorry to hear that. But then I'm happy also that you've made because the thing is that you make purpose out of your pain. You make your passion. Your pain becomes the passion, then the passion becomes the purpose. And usually people do really this hard work That's where we get it fall from, because there's a story behind it. I'm
Yes.
happy to hear your own social impact story.
Yeah.
But then what I also wanted to think, because a big part of our show is targeting people who are looking to do great things, who are looking to start great things, who are looking to, we wanted them to be able to see people that are doing stuff and learn from the inside. So my next question is speaking to, you had a law degree, you worked for a while. How did you transition is knowing that, you know what, I have the temptation of becoming a white collar lawyer or doing other things, but I know that this is my calling and this is what I'm going to make. And how did you do that? And what is that transition process? How does
Okay.
that, do you know that this is what
Okay.
you want to do? Is this your very first effort
Yeah.
to do this, or is this like a shoot up of something else and all of
Oh.
that? You know, for different people,
Yeah.
it's very clear, they focus on it and they get results. Some people, they do other smaller things, eventually it leads them to something else and then they find the final thing and then they stay there.
Okay.
What's your own story?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so I mean, my story is very clear. I started out as a lawyer providing legal services to people across different issues and different areas for 4 years. But within that 4 years, the firm I used to work with engaged in general legal practice. So I had done a couple of criminal cases. In fact, there's a particular case I took up at the firm that is also part of my story. I had represented, alongside one of my senior colleagues, we had represented 14 individuals who were charged for a capital offense. It was a popular story back then. They were charged for murder of 9 policemen whose bodies were never found. And from all indications, we knew that the guys who we met at Ikoyi prison at the time were not the ones who committed the offense. In fact, to some extent, everyone knew who committed the offense. They were militants. That was when we had a lot of issues with militants and all of that. And then we met these young men. Some of them were just at the wrong place at the right time. They were picked up and all of that happened. I took up the case at the High Court, at the Court of Appeal. We won. That was one of the cases that helped strengthen my resolve in the ability of what the law could do to create
Right
social
to wrong.
impact. Yes. But specifically in leading, well, with respect to leading Hope Behind Bars Africa, I did not have a lot of experience in the development space. I had volunteered for Amnesty International for a couple of months before starting. I also had done some projects here and there that were not related to the work that I was doing. But in terms of maybe I had worked in the non-profit space or non-profit sector, there was nothing like that. I just knew at the time when I started, I mean, I came into Abuja in 2017. And I did try, by the way, to get employment in the sector.
In this space,
Yes,
okay.
I did. I tried, and I got a lot of rejections. In fact, I also tried to volunteer specifically with organizations that
Are doing
I
something
thought were
similar.
doing, yes, something relating to what I was doing on criminal justice and all of that. And I got rejections as well. I only found opportunity to volunteer a bit with Amnesty International. And then a year after, I had another personal incident, which was the breaking point. I lost a child to the negligence in Nigeria
Health
sector, yes. And I had two options: fight or pour my pain into the work that I was doing today, and I decided to do the latter. And so, yeah, that was how I started. Transitioning wasn't easy because, again, like I said, when I started, all I wanted to do was to use my profession to provide legal representation to people who could not afford it. But over time, again, like I said, I realized that there was more to the problem than what I saw, right? There's a reason why we had large number of awaiting trial inmates. 70% of people in prison are awaiting trial. I think the number has reduced to about 68% now, but I mean, the numbers
a
are
lot.
still, yeah, it's still a lot of numbers. Yeah, so I started out trying to use my profession, and then I realized that there was also more. There's a lot. There was more to do, and because this is going out to people who are looking to come into this space, I do not think, maybe if I had more experience, we probably would be doing more than we're currently doing. Because at some point I had to take a pause. After about 2-3 years, I took a pause and I actually went to get a job in a non-profit somewhere in a human rights organization because I needed to learn the ropes. Yeah. So I don't know if this helps. I hope it helps somebody. But basically, I did not start this work as a tabula rasa. I did not start with a clean slate. I came with my 4 years experience working in legal practice, a couple of volunteering experience. I started, faced a lot of challenges, and then I had to go work in a human rights organization for 1 year, and then I returned.
And this is, so do you think this 1 year made a difference?
It
Or?
made a lot of difference.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely. Made. Before I went, and to be candid, I did not plan to do 1 year. I planned to do a long,
Longer.
yeah, because the work that I do is my calling. It's my mission, and I'm going to do this for as long as possible. So, what would it take if I need to do like a 5 year hiatus or a longer time just to go learn the ropes? It just happened that I couldn't spend more than 1 year there. But as soon as I came out, for instance, we got our first funding. Before then, a lot of the funding or a lot of the support or resources for the work was coming from my pocket. Okay. Yeah, so while I ran Hope Behind Bars Africa between 2018 and 2019 to October 2020, I used to do my legal practice by the side. And so I was literally funding the organization alongside, of course, volunteers who were providing pro bono support to the work that we were doing. As soon as I left, went to these other organizations, spent a year, came back, things picked up.
So this is it. So I like that because that's why it's all about telling stories, hearing how your journey looks. But a lot of people have a lot of misconception about how these things work or things like, it's just different routes for different people, different method. But what I've really also found to be very consistent in all the people I've interviewed on the show and also people that I've known is that there's no one direct way. It's just passion. If passion fails you one way or the other, you will kind of like navigate yourself. You find a way in one of the best way to do, on one of the right way. And there's no right or wrong way, but it's just like if you're determined, if you're really looking for, that's why it doesn't work for somebody that just feel like, oh, I have a model, I have a mentor, somebody that I want to go and start your and that's it. If you are not ready to play the long haul, it's really difficult to succeed because I'm sure for most people, the first 3, 4, 5 years is just like do the work here. You don't start getting validation, which will come to that question later on. But so I'd say it's actually good to hear that it's still the same. Like it's not like you had to figure it out. It's not like
I did not.
For some people, you just start.
I wish I did. I did not.
You just start. I know that you did some, maybe like one of this way. Like what's like the one of the first.
Oh yes, I got incubation programs and fellowships. Those were really helpful. Those were extremely helpful. In fact, I got into an incubation program by Accountability Lab, and it was the first time my idea was validated, actually. I was selling an idea then, which is to say I had been doing the work alone with a few volunteers, but we can expand this work with technology. And so I had this idea where we could connect lawyers to indigent awaiting trial inmates. And I won. I got into the incubation program, I did a challenge and I won. But again, it was a lesson because at the time I was only trying to address the problem on the surface. Now, after you leverage technology, there are other issues. There is staffing, there is personnel who will manage the technology, there was all of that. I had to learn that on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I think, but the most important thing is that you were feeling the passion. You were trying different things.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to go take a job when you had to. You had to take incubation when you had to.
Absolutely.
When it's time to now begin to focus.
Absolutely. The incubations helped a lot. I got into a lot of fellowship, as you would know. I don't know if you come back to that question, but the fellowships helped a lot. It helps with network building. It helps with even funding at some point. It helps with technical know-how because I am a trained lawyer. I am not a trained...
You're not a social impact leader in the sense of administrator. You're not a development project manager. You're not a finance. You're not a complaint. All of those things that is actually what you would do 80% because you can outsource the lawyering. You can hire lawyers and just get
which is what I'm doing now. I can't remember the last time I wore wig and gown, and I miss wearing the wig and gown. I'll probably do more of that this year. It's a lot of work.
But the resource building, the business development, the partnership, the
monitoring and evaluation.
Those are where the real work is. So the question now is, so what are the top 3 things? I think kind of I already addressed it, but since I have the question that which you knew. Or that if you can go back to 5 years ago, you could have done things. You kind of like slide into a few of them, but just quickly, like.
Okay, top 3 things I wish I knew from the beginning is that many of the problems that we try to address in this part of the world are wicked problems. So by wicked problems, there are problems that when you address the first top layer, there is another layer, there's another layer, there's several layers. And it's important that you go into addressing the problem, thinking of these other problems or these other layers that would come at some point. Because social impact is not outreach, is not donations, is not surface level work. Many times we misunderstand what social impact is. In fact, the word impact itself connotes something long term. You cannot do donation at an IDP camp and then say you're doing impact. That's not impact. That's something totally.
Intervention.
Yeah,
It's
that's something totally
it's
different.
charity.
Trust me, I mean, I didn't know that, right? I wanted to provide free legal services, and I could have continued because there is also a component of that is important. But when I look at how big the problem was, I knew that there is more to be done. So it's understanding that many of the challenges we're trying to solve, education, health, they are wicked problems that we might not even have all the answer to, but you need to bear in mind what those other components are and see how your interventions can also address those components in such a way that you are able to reach out to the multiple stakeholders involved. That brings me to the second thing, the importance of stakeholders. I am when I started this work, I could tell you categorically that I was an introvert. But right now, I find myself, I mean, I'm still very much of an introvert, but I find that a very important part of this work is the people. And so when I say the people, when I talk about the stakeholders, I'm talking about multiple stakeholders.
Relationship.
Thank you. I think the word is relationship. So relationships in terms of the relationships around the issue you're trying to address, right? For me, it's the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, Correctional Service, police, blah, blah, blah. There is also the grassroots, people at the grassroots. There is also, more importantly, the donor community, the local grassroots organizations, other organizations that you would see as collaborators. There is also even the people who are listening to you. There's just a whole lot. And I think it's important that if you're coming into this space, you build a robust relationship with all the stakeholders because it's important. It's
That's the currency of the game.
Yes, that's the currency.
Where the resources
Yes.
you can build, get the resources to
Yes,
continue to
yes.
grow.
I was someone who went to the university and I had a three-dimensional life. I did school, church, and my room. No, school, church, and library. That was me.
It.
Yeah, I mean, I no parties, nothing like that. And when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I had good grades, good girl, whatever it is. But right now, I'm learning the importance of building that social currency because it makes a whole lot of difference. Yes. Then the third thing that I think it's important that you know is funding is important. Funding is key. Funding is critical. When you ask people who do social impact work, what's the one challenge? You'll probably say funding. But you can get funding and mess up your work. It's important that you build expertise. It's important that you build technical know-how. It's important that you prepare yourself on the funding.
Before the money comes.
Because the money is going to come
regardless.
when you do good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, the money is going to come.
Say it again. I like
the
that
money.
phrase.
I'm still waiting for the money to come.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the money. But I do know that when you offer value, when you do valuable work, let me say, when you actually solve a problem, yes, that's value, right? Money is going to come, but you need to prepare.
Yeah. So my next question, you started talking about this question already,
Okay.
but I like to say it because it's the one that I am usually like, what is like the best moment of validation? That moment where you've gone through all this struggle of trying to, what point do you know that, okay, those moments where I have this thought of saying, maybe you should go find a job. Maybe that silent moment, no, I don't need to find any job anymore. This is my job and I will resource it and I will, what are those moments that you know that there is clearly open. Africa is not going to be one of those NGOs that just got registered and then they just get registered.
I mean, I'm trying hard. I know we just finished talking about funding, and I'm trying to see which of these moments of validation doesn't relate to funding, but I'm sorry.
But it's okay with this funding, because that's actually
Yeah, I think the one moment, too, but the one moment, and I need to say this story because it's important, I'm not sure I've shared it openly before, was when we won $25,000 in India. It was everything. Now I'm going to explain why. In 2021, yes, I had said earlier that we got our first funding when I left the place I was working.
Yeah.
It was $10,000 from who gave us $10,000 from Funds for Global Human Rights. Okay. It was for a 6-month project, and I was able to get 1 or 2 people join me on the project in addition to our volunteers. The $10,000. I mean, we were supposed to exhaust it in 6 months, but we stretched between January to about September. And between January to September, I had written, a lot of applications, reached out, nothing was forthcoming. So in September, we were down to zero. Again, there are lessons from all of that, which I have come to learn over time, but let's not go into that. So September, I told my people, about 3 people on my team that, they knew what was happening. Like, guys, this is where we are. We don't have funds anymore. So if you want to go, whatever you want to do, I am here. And then they stayed, everyone had like hustles by the side that they were doing here and there. And then we had gotten into this incubation program again. Was it incubation? Yes, Unleash Lab. We were on a 6-month program. And after the 6 months, certain people were supposed to qualify to go to India to pitch their ideas out of about 80 startups or 80 social impact startups and all of that. So we pitched and we found ourselves, we were qualified. We're going to India. Ola, even so they funded the trip, but even the money to pay for our visas, it was bad. We did not. I did not have it. My 2 other people on my team that were going to join me for that trip, they did not have it. It was that bad. Thank God for the men in our lives. My husband helped me. The men in their. Somehow we raised the money. So going to India was a do or die affair. Like it was like it was this or nothing.
Without money.
We can't come back if there's no money. We're not leaving India.
There you go.
Yeah, that was it. So we went, and then we had these other organizations, startups who were doing phenomenal work, AI, tech, a lot of things. And then there was we who, we were coming from the CSO space or like the NGO space. One of the major things was you needed to have a sustainability to your idea. And we were trying to find our way around it. Long story cut short, from the 25 people that were invited to India, 10 of us had to prepare to go to the Dragon's Den, which is where we're going to pitch. I was going to pitch. We qualified. We were one of the top 10. Okay. And then I pitched. It was. And they called our name. They said, in fact, the interesting thing was, it wasn't a lot of money at the time. They had said winners are going to go with $5,000 or thereabout. And then they mentioned how this organization, because of the work they do, changing lives, blah, 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 they're going to get $25,000. Hope Behind Bars Africa. It was.
I remember seeing the video, one of those social media, you were sharing the social media platform. I think it was around Christmas or towards
it was Christmas, December.
Towards the end of the year. And I was like, okay, that's really good. I was really glad. Because I know what that means. All the time, I didn't know the backstory that you're just sharing.
Oh, trust me.
But I just like the idea that nothing beats the idea that the things that you thought about in your room, in your life, in your private self, you go internationally and it's being validated. And people are believing.
Exactly.
And that's why I tell people that no matter, in as much as the relationship that we build are important to get funding, to get to do our work, nothing beats when you just show up for a competitive process and you just...
it was highly competitive. Trust me, it was highly competitive.
That's important.
It was high. It was highly... We had 3 Nigerians pitch, and that's the interesting thing about Nigeria as well. Of course,
we're all over the place, man. There's so many people and there's so many opportunities, so people are trying to solve different problems. So that's interesting to hear. And trust me, I believe very strongly that you have to have that. Because
it was a game changer.
And it's usually around that kind of place, around that where you are about at the verge of giving up.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else, and that's what I tell to people all the time, like just keep, there's no recipe. Keep going.
Yes, and I think to very large extent, I have to talk about God. I think God just knew that I needed that because...
So that's the point, right? It's God. Some people will call it God, some people will call it faith, some people will call it hope. One of my favorite my favorite quote that I always like to share is this guy, Steve Jobs. He had the commencement you can check it out on YouTube. It's a 15-minute pitch that he did at Stanford University shortly before he died. And there's a particular part of that quote that I always like. He said, you cannot make sense of things looking forward. You can only look at it looking backward. So you have to but you have to trust that the process will, so his actual words were, you cannot connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking backward. But for you to get forward, you have to somehow believe that this dot will connect. So you can look back now and look at how what happened to you, your choice of course of study, your family, the work you've done, everything is connecting to what you're doing. And then that's how you find peace in your own purpose.
Absolutely.
But you cannot make sense of that in 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And even right now, in 10 years to come, the things that's going to happen in 10 years, you look at every single step you're taking now, you look back again, and they're all like, you always look at it as a mathematics, a science that's already prepared. No, but it's a science, but it's just a science that you have to trust in a way that these things are going to connect. So if you don't have hope, to first of
Oh,
all
I mean, I hope you're embarrassed.
exactly. So
You
you're
don't
giving
have
gift,
to.
so your
Yes.
currency is up.
Actually, that's all we
And
sell.
that's
Because
actually
when
the
you look
truth.
at the criminal justice system, I mean, I will have to keep talking about the criminal justice system. Everything feels hopeless.
Yeah.
Our work involves a lot of going into prison. And people ask me, how do you do it?
The psychological angle of
You
it.
go
So
into
actually,
prison, you
that's
come out
actually yes.
hopeless.
How do you deal with the fact that you just walk into a space and somebody tells you that? I can see why you actually have a lot of stamina to actually go to India, and then you know that you probably don't know what's going to happen when you come back. But
Yeah.
because I know what it means to walk into an
Yeah.
interview room, and then you talk to somebody and say, I've been here for 5 months, 10 months,
5 months,
and
10
10
years,
years.
15 years.
Things not there. How do you survive? How can so you even
Yeah.
leave the place grateful for the things in your own life that you
Absolutely.
think that you think that you're a mess, you don't have it, but you're
Absolutely.
like there's people that have it a
Absolutely.
whole lot worse, and it's not like they're actually
Yes.
better. So I know that I know
Yes.
what that feel and being able to find that. So yes, my other question is let's start with trying to like weave it out a little bit into
Okay.
the lessons and the things.
Okay.
So you probably also again it seems like you've answered some of those questions without actually in answering other questions. So what do you think are your top 3 challenges, and then how did you overcome them? I mean, we started talking about a lot.
Okay,
but just
challenges.
in terms of those moments, those
Yeah.
things that is difficult to.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, one of it was understanding the scope of the problem. In order for you to be able to provide solution to something, you have to understand the scope of the problem. And for me, it really was going outside of our approach, initial approach, which was to just provide direct legal services. Understanding the scope of the problem would also determine how you design your interventions or how you design the work that you do. So it was an initial challenge, but over time, ensuring that we were in the spaces that matter. And when I say we, I mean not just me, but the people I work with, ensuring that we're in the spaces that matter. Reading up, on what people do in other climes, it really helped. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the fellowships, the incubation programs. I don't believe in jumping into every fellowship. I mean, I know that's something in the social impact space where you see somebody, they are professional fellowship, they jump.
If you do more than 5 years, it's already a problem because you're not strategic enough. That's why you're just
Yeah,
jumping there because
yes.
one
And one,
two good one is enough.
exactly, learning to maximize as well. I mean, the first incubation program I got into, it's little money, small stipends to help us personally each month. That was what I used to register the organization. So just understanding the need to maximize the spaces that you get into. So I mean, that's the first challenge. That is understanding the scope of the problem and ensuring that I was putting myself in places that matter to be able to design interventions that will work. That was the first one. The second one, of course, funding was a major challenge at the beginning. It's still a major challenge. I mean, it's always a challenge because the work grows.
So how did you solve the money problem?
The money problem initially was to work with volunteers.
Okay.
And I would forever be grateful. There will be no hope behind Bars Africa without our pro bono lawyers. And that's what has worked for us. We have pro bono lawyers across the country who every time we call them, they're stepping up. But I mean, of course, yes, they are pro bono lawyers means they are not paid professional fees, but we still have to take care of like their transportation and all of that. So volunteers really helped initially in terms of funding. And then, of course, right now, also understanding, like I said earlier, that if you do good work, the money would even come after you. I'm still waiting for the money to come after me, though. Yeah, so I've talked about funding. I've talked about the understanding the scope of the problem. I would say the last challenge would be, I think currently, let me talk about the current challenge I think I'm facing is that my work is expanding. I'm having to work with more people, and it's important that as a leader, I'm able to pass down the vision of the organization. And the more people you work with, the more you're increasing personnel. You have to be able to pass down that vision, right? And like I mentioned earlier, I said something earlier that I miss wearing my wig and gown. I am a hands-on, I want to get the work done person. But I'm also realizing now that there's a point you get to that you have to decide if you want to manage or you want to be an operations person. I'm talking personally now.
But that's it.
Yes. Yeah, so that's one recent challenge I'm beginning to face, learning to just let my people do the work. Trust,
and it's
yes.
really difficult
Build their
because,
capacity, leave them to do the work while I face. Yeah, so that's
no. I connect. I think I connect with you on that one because when you build something, you understand the urgency of the situation, and you are the visionary. It's a lot. and you can multitask and you can be more productive, you can do a lot of things. And then you have people that you start to bring on board, pay money, and then they're so slow and they're waiting for to. I mean, they don't have the same motivation like you do. They don't have the same
Yeah.
resources. They've not developed the same capacity like you have done to be able to do three things together. You're doing the work. I'm sure the first few years you were there. You are the program manager. you
Yeah,
are the
I was
account
comms, I
officer,
was
you are
everything,
doing
yeah.
everything, right? But now you're, and then they were. But this is what we used to do in 2 days. You are still
Exactly.
doing it in 1 week. What's
Exactly.
I'm even paying you for that. I don't even
Exactly.
get paid
I mean,
when
I
was
work with
doing that.
very, very efficient people. I mean, in terms of competence, yes. But this thing you just mentioned still happened this
It's
week.
not- it-
We could do this within few hours. Why are we doing it in a week?
My other question, I mean, I probably have about 2 or 3 to go. I think we're running out of time now.
Okay.
So, how did you handle your first rejection? We did talk about your first validation. I think it's usually, I usually ask the rejection question first before validation question. But yeah, I mean, that moment where, I'm not talking, I mean, we all get rejected all the time. But there are rejections where you knew that I should get it. This is I mean, why am I not getting it? You're
Yeah.
so, it comes with a lot of anger. And then,
Yeah.
and it's like, will lead to almost giving up. Like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't think this can work. But then it's good to let people understand that there is. How do you deal with?
Yeah.
Have you experienced something like that? And if you haven't, it's okay. But
Yeah,
if
I
you
think the
do-
first thing to say here is that you can't do social impact work without getting used to rejections. I mean, today is what? Today is 14th or 15th of January. I think I've gotten like 4 or 5 already this year. In fact, there was one I sent to a member of my team on 2 days ago, and the person's comment was something like, "Oh my God, disappointed." I'm like, "You just the start."
Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think to some extent, I've gotten to the point where I see them and I'm like, oh, okay, on to the next one.
Next one.
Yeah, but how did I handle I can't remember what my first rejection was, but I know a particular rejection that, oh my God, it was going to tear me apart. It was painful. It was painful. And that's, I think it was a fellowship that I had got into the second stage of the interview. And I think I did pretty good. Well, not only that, it was a fellowship that was predominantly going to change everything. I mean, there were lots of funds attached to it, blah, blah, blah. And that morning, I woke up and I got the mail. And it was so annoying, or it was so painful, because most other fellowships would not tell you exactly what your scores were. But I saw my scores.
You almost made it.
I was 3% away
You almost
from.
made
I'm
it.
like, what?
That's it.
It broke me. Yeah, I can remember. It broke me very well. And what did I do? I think, first of all, I had to take in the fact that, okay, this is actually happening. You didn't get this fellowship. What next? And I mean, again, I have to, I'm a person of faith. And so I will always go back to my faith and all of that. A year after, the same amount that was tied to that fellowship, I got it for Hope Behind Bars Africa through an award. In fact, that's the Global Citizen Prize, yes. It was about
And
the
with
same
probably
amount.
less work and less.
Yeah, in fact, not probably. This fellowship, the amount was tied to a specific project. But for Global Citizen, it was an unrestricted
So you could do-
funding or
you
grant.
could
So
do
we
a
could
lot.
do a whole lot with it. So that's to say that, rejections would always come, but just keep doing your work,
Tell me
right?
once again.
Just
Yeah,
keep
that's it,
doing your
that's it.
work. I think that's for me. And another one I should quickly talk about is my attempt to get into the Mandela Washington Fellowship. I applied 4 times.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
I applied 4 times, I got in twice.
Okay.
And I really want to share this story because it also, what I said earlier about ensuring you do good work, it also explains it. So the first 2 times I applied, I didn't get in. The third time I applied was during COVID, I got in. And I got the mail saying, oh, because of COVID, the fellowship this year is going to be virtual. You can either choose to accept it and then, of course, you become a fellow after the whole virtual thing, or you discontinue your fellowship and you have to apply afresh next year. And I had to ask myself, I asked around, I spoke to some people at the embassy and they were like, we do not think you should discontinue because there is no assurance you will get in again. But I looked at my work, I looked at my age. I still had about 6 years to go. I knew that we do good work. So I'm going to take a chance. So I discontinued. And then I applied again. Oh, I made a mistake. The first time I applied, the second time was when I got in. The third time, that was after COVID. I did not get in. And I'm like, oh my God.
Okay, wow.
I did not get in. Yeah, I mean, I could have been a Mandela Washington Fellowship, get all the perks of access to the embassy and all of
And then
that right
to
now.
just know that now, I just blow it up.
I just blew it up just because I couldn't get to go to the US. I tried again the 4th time and I got in.
Tell me something.
Yes, because again, like I said, I do good work. I do good. My work is I am trying to solve through my organization. We're trying to solve a problem that is a global problem, like you talked about. And every other day, we are innovating, coming up with different strategies, interventions to address this work. So yeah, you might not take me in 4 years ago, but you don't have any choice than to want me in your pool of fellows because I do good work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do agree. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, if you, it's always boils down to you as an individual. You can have all this support system, you can have all this validation, but at the end of the day, if you do not feel, it doesn't feel right. And if you have to spend all your life, for most of us impact entrepreneurs, we're spiritual people in a way. Like the connection you have with your vision,
Yep.
it has to be unexplained to an outsider.
Absolutely.
It has to be it's just so crazy that it doesn't make logical sense half of the time. Because I can imagine someone telling you that you got into Mandela Washington Fellow and you said no, you don't want
Yeah,
it.
I don't know what got into me because
But it's okay, because-
everybody said no.
you can't do that.
My spouse, my sister were like, no, just
Then
take
it boils
it.
down to you.
I was like, no. So it wasn't even that. I mean, people might think it was because I just wanted to go to the US, but I knew that there is a component that comes with the travel exposure
That's
that
the
I
most
needed for
important-
my work.
That's the most
Yes.
important part of the fellowship for you.
Yes.
And that is why which is what people always like to. You have to be able to determine why are you doing
Yes.
this. So for you,
Yes.
the fellowship is about the opportunity that is attached to that affiliation,
Absolutely.
to that actual
Absolutely.
physical experience,
Yes.
not
Yes.
just be. A lot of people are fellows and they're not really doing anything
Yes.
after that. So, but you know
Yes.
how your work can escalate. And I'm sure
Absolutely.
you already.
Oh,
it
yes.
happened
It
eventually.
was totally worth
I
it.
was like,
Trust
okay,
me.
tell me.
Totally
Yeah,
worth
that's
it. Right timing. Everything was. It was just totally worth
And
it.
so that you actually answered my next question, which is like, what is resilience for you? And
Oh, yeah.
I think resilience for you, from what you just said, and
Yes.
it's all about, you really have to be able to like believe so much in what you're doing
Yes.
in yourself in a way that you
Yes.
know that if I don't get something,
Yes.
it's not because I'm not deserving of
Yes.
it. It's just not your time.
Yes.
And you can always try
Yes.
again, and you can always. because
yes.
Trust me, I don't think I used to think that
I
I'm
can push.
persistent, but
I
wouldn't try.
mean,
I wouldn't do
resilience for
something
me,
for a
I
time,
would,
so.
except I don't want that thing anymore. I would push, or except I feel like, oh, okay, let something else, right? Let me give you another example. I'm currently, I have a Commonwealth scholarship. I'm currently doing my master's at the University of Oxford.
Yes, yes.
Same story. 3 times I knocked at Oxford. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I got in the first time. No. But you see that Oxford, I knew that even if it's going to be 10 times, and understand also for people, watching that, it's not that I'm just applying every year the same way. No,
It's always better.
You go
because
back, do your work, come back.
better.
Yeah. So every time you're refining your
Finding
application.
Yeah, because there is more stuff to put in. Because
Yes.
you're not like just there. So there's someone here I mentor,
Okay.
and I met this girl like early in the year last year, and I saw what she was doing. Excellent work, and I said, you know what, this is what you're trying to do. It's doable. I'm telling you. Next application cycle, you get your masters, and you get scholarships, and you get everything you want. But those are the things I think you need to do. And then for some really weird, life happens to all of us.
Yeah.
So she had a very terrible life experience. That she couldn't do
Push,
much in
yeah.
2024. And then we were having like end of the year review. We're talking on the phone, and she was telling me, Mr. Ola, but you told me I would. So when it was the time to start applying to schools, I told her, do not apply.
Yeah, because you don't have anything.
Because
to
the
show.
things
Yeah.
I wanted you to do from the beginning that made me feel like you would be a good candidate when that time comes, you haven't done. So you will not get in. Because it's still basically the same application that you did in
No, yeah.
it's just a necessary gamble.
Yeah.
So I'd advise, she wasn't happy with the fact that I said to her that she should not apply. But instead, she felt bad that I've lost faith in her. I'm like, no, it's
not.
okay.
It's
Life
just
has
what
happened.
yeah.
You couldn't do much because you had this personal life experience that you don't need to do anything about it, and it's okay. So when we were talking, and she said to me that, I was like, no, you missed it. You were going to get in on the assumption that 1 or 2 other things will have happened in your that will improve your chances of getting in. That's my own evaluation based on my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And that's it. You have to do more
Yes.
work. That's why all these applications for me, they are just enablers.
Yeah.
They are enabling what you already have. They are
Yes.
enabling, so the work will continue to happen. You must be able to do the work while you now find opportunities to get it done better. But there's something to work. The core is the work. But people always think that there are a lot of people that are professional application makers. They just do application, they just do. And then at the end of the day, you look at the last time you did something substantial was
Yeah.
2022, and you think that
How?
magic will happen.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind for me is consistency. Yeah, consistency, resilience, and consistency go hand in hand. Because when you talk about resilience, you're talking about something very hard, something difficult that you keep pushing through. What helps you push through is understanding consistency. Of course, with consistency, we also talk about discipline. I mean, I don't know what the situation is with this person, but living in Nigeria alone is hard. We can decide that, you know what, I just want to just earn a living, pay my bills. Being able to push through whatever challenges you have as a person and still pouring yourself into that thing
Helping
that
other
it
people.
makes a lot of difference.
So what's the
Okay.
future for OBN Bar? What does success
Oh,
look
wow.
like? What in 10 years? In looking back, what will you, if you have the opportunity to, like, at least, like, I know you have a strategic plan, you have all of these things, but just for the sake of this conversation, what are you looking like? So if you have, if with all the things you need is not the problem, money is not the problem, staffing is not the problem, you have all the funding to
Yes.
do what the things to do, what will you look like in 10 years?
The future for us in 10 years is that as much as possible, we would continue providing direct services to people who are just as impacted. But we have come to that realization as an organization where we know that we can do all the work, we can have all the funds and all of that. But the change really happens when the government, who are the custodians of these issues, actually do their part of the work. So the future for us in the coming years is critical engagement with the government. We can, like I said, do the work directly, provide rehabilitation, reformation support. But the people who are in charge of working with the prisoners is the government. So a lot of engagement with the government, a lot of hoping and working with other actors to ensure that we bring in the right people, elect the right people into the space. A lot of looking into what the budget says for the correctional service, what the budget says for, the criminal justice as a whole, and following the money enough to ensure that the money is being used for what it should be done. So basically, in summary, yes, I mean, we've come to that point where we know that our approach to these issues will be dual. We will continue to provide our direct services because, we have everything it takes, But that system change work, ensuring that the government does their part of I don't know how it's going to happen.
You know why I smiled when I asked the question immediately?
Yes.
It's because one of the biggest realizations I personally and with my own work realized in 2024 is what I just talked about.
Yep.
I used to do some work with the government. But in 2014, 2015, I got so much disappointment. You know how government is, right?
Yes.
And I said, my hands are off. I got nothing to do with the state. Then 2024, my biggest realization is
you can't.
Everything you're doing is
funny
just...
enough, I used to be that. In fact, initially when we started, I was like, let me just do my work and you can't do without government.
You can't do it.
And so that's why we have to get it right.
The realization that the state
the state
has all the power, so much power.
If the
Look
state
at
does
how
their
much-
work, trust me, there will be no hope. Like I said earlier, I don't want to be ED for the next 20 years. I'm a young person, I'm just 32. There's a lot I want to do with my life. I have lots of giftings and all of that. So let the state do. If the state does its work, our work is finished. We'll move on to something else.
So I always have this final question,
Nigeria.
final question. It's Nigeria what?
Absolutely.
So you know why I asked the question?
Oh, my
I mean,
goodness.
I'm in that place myself that I have to explain to people all the time, my
Yeah.
family, my friends, that why you live? I mean, there's an assumption that if you are living in Nigeria at this point, for me personally, they think that I must be making a lot of money. And I'm like, I don't have no money because I'm working in short impact. I'm struggling, I'm just getting by. But I'm fulfilling purpose, so I choose to be here. So it's Nigeria.
Absolutely. See, there's no Nigerian slander around me. As much as it's funny because I work in a space where I see how terrible things are. I see the wrath in the system. Even as a human rights defender that I am, I mean, I've gotten, I don't want to call it attacks per se, but I know what it is like being a human rights defender. But I'm an incurable optimist when it comes to Nigeria, and that's simply because I'm a Nigerian. I have been to other parts of the country, and every time I go there, I know I am a second-class citizen. Even though I bring a lot of value to the table, it's still clear that all I have is, that value that I bring to the table, and after that, you have to go back to your country. So is Nigerian worth it? Yes. Even if my kids get dual citizenship or whatever tomorrow, they're still Nigerian.
They will always be.
They would always be
And
Nigerians.
Nigerian
And
by
I think
blood,
that if we don't build, somebody has to build.
because Nigeria is not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not
Because
going
since they
anywhere.
started,
Yeah,
it's always
even if
going
I
to be
leave today, my parents are here.
your friends are
You would
going to be
always have
here,
ties
the
around here.
families
So
are
it's
always
totally
going.
worth it.
So I do agree. I think so. The reason why that question is important as a closure, as a way to close the conversation, is the reason why we are doing social impact work is because Nigeria is the way it is in the first instance. I mean, at least the dimension that we're doing. Although impact is always everywhere, there's a lot of work and social challenges and social problems. Even in America and developed countries where there's still problems of similar nature, but maybe not as intense or or it's not manifesting the same way it's manifesting here, but we still have these problems anyway. So there's inequality everywhere in the world.
Yes.
There's a lot of challenges in different ways.
And sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
Also
sure.
to say that Nigeria has a lot of bad press. I mean, things are bad. Yes, things are bad.
But a lot of things are also good.
Yeah, a lot of things are, and then also there are also things that are bad out there. I keep saying that the only time I really felt very, very threatened for my life was when I was in the US, in DC. I had never felt so threatened for my life, like that situation that happened in the split of 30 seconds. I was thinking, what if he has a gun? What if I've never, and I'm in Nigeria where there's insecurity and all of that. I've never felt as threatened.
Okay, wow.
See, we have bad press and things are hard.
I
Things
think
are
my
bad.
mom needs to hear this.
Things are hard. Things are bad. But people are
It's
still
not as bad
thriving.
as they make it look.
Yeah,
It's
people
not
are
as
still
bad.
thriving.
Things
Yes.
it's not as bad as they make it look. So thank you very much, Funke. I really appreciate this sharing this platform with you, having
Thank
an
you.
opportunity to share your progress, your work, and your progress as an impact leader in this space and
Thank you.
with our community. And then
Thank you for having me.
I'm hoping that everybody that listening or that's going to be watching this show will be able to pick one or two things, get some insight into it, and you continue to be a leader to give yourself to the society and
Thank
then to
you.
the space, and then so thank you for what you do.
Thank you
And,
so
thank
much.
you
And
very
thank you. I think I should mention, you didn't mention it at all here, but you used to be my landlord. And I think that also is a form of growth, because when we use the Impact Hub, I mean, we couldn't afford rent anywhere else, and you had this thing where people could come in, use a part of your space, and I mean that helped us for a couple of months before we were able to move. So thank you also for what you do to support people in this space.
Thank you very much. That's our own way of we are innovation hub, so it's always about supporting people, creating system and all that. So thank you for
You're
it's
welcome.
okay. You're welcome, and I wish you all the best. And
Thank
wish
you.
Hope you end by the very best in the
Thank
times to
you.
come ahead. And everyone, thank you for watching. It's been a wonderful time. So please do subscribe to our channel, share with your friends. Make sure that you click on the notification button so you can receive future episodes. This is actually part of our Meet the Founders series, where we bring in founders of impact leaders to share their ideas, to share their journey and their growth with us, with our audience, to be able to. So if you are interested in building something, please, and you know anyone that is building something in Nigeria or anywhere in Africa, please share the podcast with them, share this episode with them, and let them hear the stories of leaders and founders and how they are thriving despite and in spite of the limitation of their own self, of their own environment. So the show, it's all about creating that space to allow people to find for a better self and also for a better world. Thank you for watching, and see you the next episode.